Hello, everyone. This is Rowan Salisbury School CTE, Mr. Dominic Bates, and it is our work-based webinar Wednesday. Welcome, everybody. Just like on all of our webinars, I ask you to use the 3 L's. That's look, listen, and learn. So I want you to tune in, look at the screen with your eyes, make sure that you have on your listening ears. And if you have on your listening ears, if you're listening, you're guaranteed to learn something today. So I've got a very special guest with me, one of my good friends, a Rowan County native. It's Dr. Joi McGraw. So without further ado, I'm just going to let Dr. McGraw tell you a little bit about herself, talk about her official title and some of the things that she does. It's
Good
on you.
evening. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining. I hope that you gain a lot from this session. I am Dr. Bettina Joi McGraw. I am from Salisbury, graduated from North Rowan High School in 2002. I had to think on that. I am currently a pediatric hematology and oncology physician in the Washington, D.C. metro area. I work for the FDA as a hematology physician, and I love what I do. Typically, my typical work day is consists of reviewing different drugs or different treatments that may be in the pipeline for sickle cell disease, thalassemia, and different other different blood disorders that may have various treatments that are out there that the FDA is reviewing, and I oversee some of those things. That's kind of what I do.
Yeah, you got a pretty big responsibility ahead of you, and I'm glad that you look like you have fun with it,
I do.
and I'm glad that you take it seriously. So, we got some middle school students on here. They might have no idea what hematology and oncology consist of. Can you just give them a little bit of insight?
So hematology is basically blood. So basically, the blood that flows through our veins. I'm the doctor of that. So the blood that flows through our veins, you can have different disorders. Some of you, especially some of the students of color, may know people with sickle cell disease, and basically, this is a disorder where the blood that flows through our veins doesn't flow. In a fluid way. So that causes it to sickle, and it changes the shape of the red blood cell, which is a circle. It changes it to like
Mhm.
a C. And so because of that C shape, it doesn't flow adequately through your veins and your organs and your other parts of your body. So that is what I do for a living, is try to treat those kinds of patients and see that they have a better quality of life, that they live longer, and that they live healthier. The other part of what I do is I'm also an oncologist, and that is basically the study of cancer cells. Many of you may know people who have been diagnosed with cancer. And so it's a devastating thing to encounter, or to see someone endure. So I do take great joy in being part in the lives of those who are fighting and winning the battle of cancer.
Yeah, that sounds very gratifying. So just tell us about like how you got to where you are. When did you know that you wanted to be a doctor? And how did you go about pursuing it? What type of education or background did you need? How did you get that information? Talk about some people who might have helped you along the way, that kind of thing.
It's really funny you asked that, because in high school, I want to say when I was in the ninth grade, I had to go to the optometrist. And I don't even remember why, because I don't wear glasses, but I happened to go to the optometrist, and I was just fascinated with what they did. So initially, it started off as me wanting to be an optometrist. That later evolved as I learned more about medicine and being a doctor. I met an OBGYN physician in Salisbury, Um, and she was just educating me on things about medicine and about being an OBGYN. And for those that don't know, an OBGYN is the women's doctor. So they take care of women who are pregnant or going to be pregnant. Basically, all women's health is what OBGYNs do. And so I got obsessed with this women's health because I was so into women's health. And that was kind of how that started. Along the way, my mom is an educator, so going to school was always her first and foremost requirement of me was that I complete my goals, and if I wanted to be a doctor, that I was going to go to school and do it. So I went to NC State University, which you all know is a heavy engineering and science school. Veterinarians go there. It's a very great school, but it was difficult to navigate the medical school process because we don't have a medical school at NC State. So I had to seek out outside mentors and attend programs at different other universities and colleges that did have a medical school, and seek mentorship in other schools with from people who were actually physicians, because that's the track that I was wanting to do.
Mm-hmm.
So in that process, volunteering in clinics was one of the big things that really helped me. And because of that, while during the summer having fun is a great thing to do, a lot of the times during the summer is where you gain your largest I guess it would say leg up when there's something that you really want to do. So I use my summers to volunteer at different medical clinics, shadowing, really your free time. Because they don't need you there. If you show up, you do. If you don't, you don't. So I would just show up and follow them around, and sometimes they'll trust you enough where they would let me, go see patients with them. Dr. Brown in Salisbury, I remember him very distinctly because he let me shadow him in his clinic in Salisbury, and he was very influential in teaching me a lot about medicine. So that's kind of how I got my start to becoming a physician.
Man, that's awesome. I just really like the story of the journey because it's going to be a journey to get wherever you want to get to, students. So just listen up. So talk about some of the hard skills that are needed to be successful in your job.
So some of the hard skills that are critical. I mean, there's really no way around it. You have to be able to apply mathematics. Period. You have to be able to be at least decently strong in the sciences, and I say like biology, chemistry, physics for sure. Physics is one of those ones. It's tricky, but you do need physics in medicine. Um, I would say English too, because we do a lot of, as you have to document everything you do in medicine. And the way you document is how you get paid. So English a lot of people don't really, think, oh, why do you need English? Why do I have to do well in English? They actually look at that when you get ready to apply for residency. They look at how well you can write and comprehend reading and writing, to see, can you be a resident? Can you be a physician, in this setting? So those are some of the hard skills I would say definitely are your must-haves.
How much research do you have to do?
They don't expect you to do a ton of research before medical school because they know, like, it's hard. You're in school full time. It
Mm-hmm.
is nice, and it is definitely a leg up if you have had some exposure, even if it's just shadowing in like a lab or doing some kind of research program. There's so many in North Carolina. We are blessed with a lot of schools and universities in North Carolina, so there are different ways you can get that exposure for free. So I would say attending a program is a plus, but research is definitely not a must.
Cool. So what about the soft skills?
Some of the soft skills, I would say definitely communication, because you are communicating with different disciplines all day long, and the way you talk to people and the way you interact with people is definitely something that goes a long way, because you do have to be compassionate. You're dealing with people, right? So you want to make sure that you are able to listen and understand and synthesize information quickly but thoroughly. It's a skill, but you have to make sure that you're good at it. Um, I would definitely say time management. It's one of those ones that we all probably struggle with, but it's you have a lot to get done in a day. And you still have to go home to your family, right? And you still have other things that may be of personal interest to you, but you have to make sure that you are managing your time and becoming efficient with your time. So those are some of the main things I would say on a day to day that I use absolutely every day.
Cool. So, talk about what the day to day looks like. So, I know you said it's very, fast paced. You
Mhm.
got to be able to manage your time. You got to be able to do things on the go. You have to learn fast. So, tell us about what the day to day looks like, because it seems like you're pretty busy.
So I'll give you two different days. So I'll give you a day if I'm in the hospital and I am what we call rounding. Rounding is basically seeing patients that are in the hospital or that are admitted in the hospital. So a typical day for when I'm at the hospital would be coming in around 6 a.m., 6 to 6:30 a.m. Um, and that the night before, I've already looked on the electronic medical record to see who my patients are, what they're there for, how they're doing, how stable are they. So when I get there at 6 to 6:30, I'm looking to see what happened last night. I may have residents, which are physicians that are still in training that have reported to me things that happened. But at small community hospitals, you wouldn't have that. So you would be doing all of that on your own. You're looking at what we call their vital signs, which is basically their blood pressure, their heart rate, things that show you how well or how they didn't do overnight. And then you have to go see all your patients. And so that's when that time management comes in because let's say you have 20 patients to see. You want to see them all. They all have questions for you. They all want to talk to you. Some of them maybe sleep. You have to go back. So you really have to juggle to see, how much time can you spend per patient in each room. Because after you go see them, then you have to go back to your desk and you have to do your notes on every single patient that you saw. And then before you leave for the day, it may be 6 or 7 o'clock in the afternoon after you've done everything that you need to do. You've followed up with things, you've put your orders in for all your patients. Then you have to go back and, circle back again to make sure there's no last minute things that you need to follow up with the nurses, with anyone else that's on your team, your residents, the nurse manager, your colleagues, other physicians, other nurse practitioners, anyone else that's on your team. And your team could be so many people, your respiratory therapist, your pharmacist, anyone that's on your team. You want to circle back to make sure there's nothing else that they need to tell you that you need to do for them or they need to do for you. So that's a day in the hospital. A day at the FDA is very different because you are dealing with very big drug companies. You are dealing with people who are scientists who are researching different drugs that may be in the pipeline. And so you are communicating all day long about these things, and you have to be available pretty much at any given time because if something goes wrong with a drug in a study, which is basically how we look at drugs, we study them in people, right? Um, so if anything goes wrong or happens, you have to be available to troubleshoot that because it could be deadly, right? That's what part of the FDA. That's what part of our job is to prevent things from getting to the market that can be harmful. So that day is a bit different than a hospital day. But the one thing that marries them together and is very similar is that your day is centered around doing what's best for the patient
And you're dealing with people all day
all day
long. You're
long.
communicating all day long. I
Hmm.
mean, that's just what I'm hearing. And so you have to be a people person too,
Hmm.
because I don't want a doctor that comes in that's mean or moody or dismissive, and they just act like they're too busy to talk to you.
Hmm.
So Oh yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
see, I see you got it. Yes. You got to be strong too, because sometimes you have to deliver some bad news.
Mhm.
So tell us just a quick story, if you can, of one of your best days or one of your worst days on the job.
Let's see. I'll tell you about it's a combination of both. So I can tell one story and it will meet both. So
Okay.
I was in the hospital. I was rounding, and I had a mutual friend who's also a physician, and this family won't mind me telling this story. And she was one of my sickle cell patients. And so she was admitted because she had some complications due to her illness.
Mm,
And I had not quite got to her on my rounds yet, because again, I was explaining, we have residents, we have trainees, we have students, a lot of different people on the team. So a lot of times rounds can take quite a bit of time. And so I had received a message saying that there was a mutual friend who had a family member who was admitted to my service, and they weren't doing well, and they were very concerned. So, as a physician, when you're on service and you receive a message like that about a patient you haven't even seen yet from someone who's not even in the hospital and not even in the same state as you, that is your worst day, because your heart drops and you're like, well, what is going on and why don't I know about it, right?
mm-hmm.
So I stepped away from rounds, and I actually called the person that sent me the message, and she connected me to the person that the message had come from. And she explained to me what had happened. She explained to me what she was seeing. She had been FaceTiming the patient from where she was, and she was very concerned, rightfully so. And so when I got to the bedside, it was fear. I was afraid, because the patient wasn't doing well. And I had to quickly think, okay, how can I have not left my team because I went to check on this very sick patient? Um, what needs to happen first? And so in my mind, I'm running through my ABCs of what needs to go, first, second, third, who I need to call for backup, and what I need to do to escalate the situation so that the patient gets what they need. So that again, that was one of the worst things that could have happened to me as a physician on my service. But the positive of that is I was able to escalate the situation quickly enough, and now that has become that family has become a very close friends of mine. So while that was a very bad scenario, one of the best things I gained from that was a near and dear patient to my heart. So it all that to say is that your negative experience is always treat people with your best, because you never know who's on the other side of that. And because of that, I
Mm-hmm.
visit that family. I call that patient via FaceTime to check on her. You just never know who you're going to meet when you're taking care of someone.
Oh yeah, and people are always
Hmm.
watching, no matter
Always.
what you're doing. And
Hmm.
it's with anything, students. It's not about what you do for people. It's all about how you make them feel. People are
That's right.
always going to remember how you make them feel. Um, and so I got one last question for you, and then we'll wrap it up if you don't have anything else. But my
Okay.
last question is, if you can go back to when you were a teenager,
Hmm.
you were walking those Northern High School Cavalier hallways,
Hmm.
what would you tell yourself? What kind
You
of advice
know,
would you give?
I would say that I would have asked more questions and sought out more opportunities, in a sense that Um, when you don't have a doctor or something, whatever you want to do, if you don't have that kind of person in your family or even really in your immediate networks, you don't know who to ask. And I think that we think that we'll ask that at the next step in college. I can ask those questions. You take advantage of every opportunity you get to ask questions, because a lot of the people that you interact with, even in high school, middle school, they do have those connections, and you can sometimes find mentorship in ways that you don't realize that you can. And realizing that the sky is truly the limit. You can do whatever you want to do. Because I don't think I imagined that I would be sitting here as a physician talking to you all today, because I knew I wanted to be a doctor, but what that looked like to me, I wasn't really sure. But tell yourself what that looks like to you, and if you want it, you can get it. So if you want to be a surgeon, sure, you sure can. And so I think that the main thing that I would tell you is don't settle. Go for what it is that you want, and have purpose with what you want, and go for that.
Absolutely. I love it. Do you have anything else that you would like to share?
No, I think, I would say this, that, don't be shy. And just because you don't know someone, Mr. Bates, and he knows me. If you have questions, or you're like, I just want to talk to her on a one-to-one basis, don't be afraid. Make that time and reach out, and set those things up, because Mr. Bates has many, many students. So you have to be proactive in your education and your learning, and seek some of those things out for yourself.
I love it, man. I remember when we were in high school together, you said you was going to be a doctor, and you did it. And so, I mean, I didn't know. It's crazy that you say that though, but I didn't know what that would look like for you if
Hmm.
you were to achieve that goal. But I mean, I'm happy and I'm proud for you for achieving that goal. And so, I mean, kudos to you and good job. I mean, I saw some of the work that you put in high school, you know.
Hmm.
So you started working there, and it paid off for you.
Thank
So,
you.
oh yes, absolutely. If you don't have anything else, I was taking some notes. So students, here's another thing: no matter what you're doing, where you are, you can always learn something. So you need to take copious notes. I was sitting here; I might have looked like I was on my phone, but I got a whole page of notes that I've learned just from having a 20-minute conversation. So I'm just going to highlight a few things just in case you guys didn't catch them. The first thing that I noted was seek mentorship, and you have to seek that mentorship. It's not going to come and find you. You're actually going to have to go out and seek it. Make sure you try to get some volunteer hours. Everything is not all about getting paid. Sometimes you got to crawl before you walk. So, if you got to volunteer here and there, or you got to do some things, it's all about gaining the experience. It's going to pay. It's going to pay off in the end. The other thing, use summers as a competitive advantage. That's all I kept. That's all it kept. I wrote competitive advantage down like 20 times when I was taking my notes. But all of these things will help you get a competitive advantage, gain a competitive advantage. Use it in the summertime. Use it on your free time. Experiences are key. Those experiences that you have right now are key. Seek opportunities and ask questions right now. Don't settle, don't be shy, and don't be afraid. Because there's one thing for sure, you're going to mess up. But another thing that's for certain is you can always bounce back. It's always room for mistakes. And so you can always make it better. But that's it. I just want to thank you again, Dr. B. Joi McGraw. I really appreciate you attending and just investing and pouring into our children today. So
Thank you for having
thank
me.
you. If there's not anything else, we're out.